Kia ora, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Ultimate Growth Experience. It's a pleasure to be doing my first book review for 2021, and I'm privileged to talk to you about a very important topic. And this is about the white working class folks in the United States. And the title of the book is J.D. Vance's book, Hillbilly, Elergy. It's a book that I was planning on reading for a long, long time. I bought the book when I was up in Auckland in January, and I finished the book 2 weeks ago. I left the book, unfortunately, in Auckland, but I thought it was a extraordinarily timely topic, particularly in relation to what happened last year in November, when President Joe Biden got got the presidency by defeating populist previous President Donald Trump. And JD does a miraculous and exceptional job in explaining why his folks voted for the president. And it comes down to the origins of J.D. Vance himself. He grew up in Kentucky, in one of the Rust Belt states. He has a Appalachian background, which is sort of like the Irish, Scottish people who originally immigrated to the United States during the 16th, 17th century. And these people are the sort of people that Thomas Sowell would describe as the ones with the redneck culture, something that he talked about in his book, Black Rednecks and White Liberals. But in correlation with that, JD's story really it hit a nerve, actually. The guy, JD, grew up in an environment where his mom was a heroin and a drug addict. She was a nurse. She got fired from her job for rollerblading. She was very irresponsible, but in another way very intelligent, something that JD talks about in detail in his book. His father was a nice man, but left and became you could say, a strong, convicted Christian, but someone that he really wasn't able to resonate with. And when you look at JD's life, he was in an extraordinarily chaotic and you could say unstable family environment. You know, one, his mom was an addict, his dad had to leave him, and then his mom had like multiple different sexual partners throughout his time as a child and also as a teenager. And this was reflected in his, you could say, performance in school. And unfortunately, he was on a path where he was, you could say, going in the wrong direction, not necessarily being diligent and being responsible as a student, hanging around with the wrong people, although JD does acknowledge the fact that that has to do with the environment, the fact that he is surrounded by a lot of people that come from this, you could say, redneck culture. And it's it's a striking book. It really is a striking book because these are the people that supposedly voted for Donald Trump, even though JD himself continues to talk about the fact that he never even mentioned the previous presidents, even once in his book. But the storyline was the thing that really resonated with me. Is that this guy who grew up in this chaotic family environment where a lot of people in his community refused to work, refused to participate in being socially mobile, and he came up with a number of different examples. He says on one hand, it is true that the white working class did get screwed over by the liberal elites and the liberal establishment who decided to offshore a lot of their manufacturing work to China, to Vietnam. But simultaneously, he says that that's not the only factor. The other factor is the fact that a lot of the people on the ground in his community refuse to actually go to work. In fact, he gives one example where there's a young couple where a 19-year-old girl who gets impregnated by a 20-year-old man, and the 20-year-old man refuses to work. He takes a lot of lunch breaks. He is not diligent, and then he gets fired, and then he blames the government for not doing enough for him. So JD talks about the mismatch between one is the poor public policy being conducted by the elites at the time, but simultaneously there was a lot of irresponsible behavior, which to a degree is the fault of those people. And JD is important in this story because he is one of the few people that was able to get out, get out and become a complete success. Now, he grew up in this Appalachian environment, and he does publicly say that he still loves his family, but he's now living with his wife, who he met at Yale, with two kids, a committed Roman Catholic, and he's living in Silicon Valley as a venture capitalist. But this story is something that I think a lot of people who follow the intersectionality sort of dichotomy among like white privilege and all of these other things that I've noted across the public sphere, is that those sorts of people wouldn't even pay attention to the poverty and the lack of social mobility among the white working class. And I think JD does a fantastic job in explaining this. And this is something that policymakers across the Western world have not been paying attention to in the last few decades. They are finally reading and understanding about it now, but in terms of practice, it's still the same status quo. And I don't think President Biden will do a good job in alleviating those problems. Um, so on one hand, he agrees with intellectuals like Charles Murray, who talks about the demise of the white working class in his book Coming Apart, and also obviously Robert Putnam's book about Bowling Alone, where isolation and lack of communitarianism, which is leading to a decline in social capital. So JD does address that, but he also addresses the fact that, look, there is an inherent cultural problem among the people that live in the Rust Belt states of Kentucky, Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and that region. But I think if I could chime back to JD's life himself, the one story that really I thought was impressive was the fact that his grandmother, or how JD describes it, his memaw, was the one that saved him. She was the one that said, you have to move in with me. I'm going to teach you what hard work is. So JD did part-time work as a grocer. He understood the importance of money, and he understood the importance of work ethic. He understood the importance of being diligent, studying hard. And JD says that it was actually memaw that saved him. It was his hard, dedicated work, and obviously his grandmother got him a calculator, extremely expensive for a poverty-stricken family at the time. That was how he did very well at high school. So recovered. He was getting like a D or something in his I don't know, third year, second year at high school, and then after that he was able to become a college student, a Navy officer, and then eventually to Yale Law School. And that is how the J.D. Vance that we know today became the J.D. Vance that we know today. Otherwise, his life story would have been very similar to the other white working class kids that were not able to take opportunities, but also get stuck in the cycle of poverty. The backwardness, the inability to, you could say, persevere and take opportunities, but simultaneously, not enough attention being paid to these people. And these are the sorts of people that Hillary Clinton defined as the basket of deplorables. And for elites, liberal elites, to describe people like this is, in that fashion, is not only unacceptable, but also the reason why a lot of these people that were in that area voted for President Trump. And we all know that what that man did in the 4 years that he was in was chaotic. It was a horrible presidency. But these were the sorts of people that voted him in. And JD's story is an example of not only just, it's unbelievable and remarkable, and I think he's an honorable fellow for showing this insight. It's an autobiography, right? But it's also something that I think political science students and historians should pay much attention to, because you're seeing similar things that happened in, you could say, the north side of England, Newcastle, Sunderland, that sort of area. Those people also lost a lot of the jobs through, you could say, Thatcher and the conservative government's policies at the time. even though a lot of the white working class people supported Thatcher. But there's a lot of parallels between the effects of globalization on the one hand, which JD talks about, and another, the cultural element that is missing. The backwardness, children being born out of wedlock, heroin addiction, jobs not being available, sort of losing that communitarian sense, people moving into urban cities and their communities being left out, a lot of those things. But it's a fantastic book, and I'm just going to read one section for you guys that I thought was pretty good. Quote, I consume books about social policy and the working class. One book in particular, a study by eminent sociologist William Julius Wilson called The Truly Disadvantaged, struck a nerve. I was 16 the first time I read it, and though I didn't fully understand it at all, I grasped the core thesis. As millions migrated north to factory jobs, the communities that sprouted up and around those factories were vibrant but fragile. When the factories shut their doors, the people left behind were trapped in towns as cities that could no longer support such large population with high quality work. Those who could, generally the well off, the well educated, wealthy, or well connected, left, leaving behind communities of poor people. These remaining folks were the truly disadvantaged, unable to find good jobs on their own, and surrounded by communities that offered little in the way of connections or social support. There you have it. JD himself talking about the fact that these communities got left behind. And I think this is one of the best books that I've read. And there's a reason why I put that quote in my phone, because it's striking. These are the people that are going to drive political outcomes for the next few years, and they will continue. Donald Trump lost, but he still gained more than 9 million more votes than the last election. And as a political scientist, as public policy analysts, which is what I am, or even people that are interested in these phenomena, we need to pay serious attention to scholarship or even autobiographies that cover topics like this. So thank you very much for watching this video. I'm planning to do far more book reviews. It was J.D. Vance's book Hillbilly, Elergy was an extraordinarily enjoyable read. I hope you guys check it out. I'll leave the link in the description. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.